How about now? Okay, let's try it now.
Testing, 1, 2.
Okay. All right, folks, it's past 8 o'clock, and I know Representative Hughey always likes to start on time. She said she was going to be here at 5 till, and she was, and we weren't started yet because we couldn't get in the building. We've got 2 or 3 bills we're going to get started with, but first off, would you join me in prayer? The Lord, as we come together to do the work of the people of Georgia, let's not forget that that's the reason we're here, the people of Georgia. Forgive us, dear Lord, where we fail thee and where we fail each other. In Christ's name we pray, amen. We've got 3 bills, like I mentioned. The first is Representative Lumsden. We're going to let him go ahead and get started, and then I'll move down and give Representative Shaw Blackman the seat here. See how he enjoys that. Chairman Lumsden, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring to you House Bill 592, LC number 372416. It's a very short bill. Back in 2015, we passed House Bill 162, which allowed insurance companies to have a self-evaluative privilege. It was a process that we put into code that allowed them to do internal evaluation and audits and compliance. We all know how important compliance is within the industry, so this was something that we put into place. But we also put a sunset provision in place, the purpose of that being to allow the Insurance Commissioner's Office to have the opportunity to see how well this self-evaluative privilege program was working. After having observed it for 2.5 years, the Insurance Commissioner's Office thinks it's a good program to have in place, and this bill simply removes a sunset provision that was included in the original bill to give, as I said, give the Insurance Commissioner's Office time to evaluate the effectiveness of the program. That's what the bill does. It's a simple one-page bill. It simply removes the sunset provision from the self-evaluative privilege.
So in the big scheme of things, if an insurance company does a self-evaluation and finds a problem, they fix it, and the insurance department doesn't ding them.
Absolutely.
That's it. Okay. I'm ready for a motion or a question if anyone has one.
Move to pass.
Move to pass and second. All in favor? Aye. Very good. Thank you, sir. I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Blackman.
And I get to turn it right back over to you, Chairman Smith,
Okay.
for House Bill 678.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. House Bill 678. This was presented to the subcommittee last week. Representative Taylor's subcommittee on health and life. They were very kind to me and passed it out of subcommittee. I appreciate that. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did last time for the subcommittee because most of you have heard a good bit about this bill anyway. But just to give you an idea, I've been working on this little project for well over 3 years now and trying to resolve an issue that's really a tremendous burden on the citizens of Georgia. And that's, it's closely tied to the number one reason bankruptcies occur in the state of Georgia and also nationwide, and that's the price of health care. And just as an example so that you'll kind of put this in perspective, and I just got this within the last week or so, it says more than 22% of Georgia residents, now that's 1 out of every 5 Georgia residents now, have medical debt in collections. Not just medical debt, they have it in collections. And healthcare cost is the number one reason for bankruptcy, price of healthcare. So this is what this bill does. It's basically divided into two parts. The first part is transparency. And under the new, under 678, the transparency part, when you go into a healthcare facility and you ask, and you have to ask, you know, they're not going to just hand you a telephone book of everything that you may need to know. But if you ask, then they will have to tell you the providers who are participating in your procedure. They will have to tell you if those providers are part of your insurance network. Now, these are scheduled procedures. Now, you go in for a scheduled procedure. They also have to tell you what their fees are. Now, I guess the best example I can give you on that is something like a tonsillectomy. You take one of your kids in for have their tonsils removed. As many tonsils have been removed over the years, they pretty much know what that's going to cost, how long it takes, and everything about it. They have to tell you who the providers are, if they're in your network, and what their fees are. Then they have to tell you what insurance is going to pay. And from that, you will know if there's a bill coming. Now, if you see something from one of the providers that particular provider is not in network, and then you have an option. You have a couple options, as a matter of fact. You can tell the healthcare provider or organization, you know, maybe you need to find somebody that can do that same job who is in my network. If it's an anesthesiologist, you know, maybe you need to find another anesthesiologist who may be in my network so I don't get this surprise bill. And then they also have to tell you what insurance pays. Now, all this stuff is on the internet. You can find it all on the internet. So you got this price out there. So then at some point in time, if you decide that you can't get together with a provider, well, then you got the options to tell the healthcare organization, maybe I need to go to somewhere else. You know, maybe I need to go find another hospital. Maybe I need to go find another healthcare organization to provide this service. So you will not have a surprise bill. Now, I want to emphasize, these are for scheduled procedures where there are no complications. Tonsillectomy, where everything works like it's supposed to. Okay, now, there's another part to that. Now, let's say that you go in and you have a procedure done, but all of a sudden, some kind of complication develops. So they have to bring in different providers that you don't know anything about, you have no say-so, but they are necessary to perform and to adjust for those complications. Then you may have a surprise bill because you don't know who they had to bring in. You don't know if they're in your network or anything. So you may have a surprise bill if that occurs. Okay. Now, I'm going to pick on the healthcare organizations for a second. And I said this the other day. For the life of me, I cannot understand why the CEO of a healthcare organization would allow someone to come in and charge an outlandish bill, knowing that me as a patient, you as a patient, one of your constituents as a patient, when we get that outlandish bill, we're going to make a phone call. And normally it's to the hospital. Well, the hospital didn't do it. You know, it's one of the contract providers normally that does this. And I'll tell you what a CEO of a hospital told me, because he's the one that kind of put the impetus on House Bill 71 that y'all passed out that's on the table and on the House floor right now, because his comments to me were, Richard, and here again I'm going to pick on anesthesiologists because that's the ones I get the most complaints about. He said, I was talking to an anesthesiologist last night. He's wanting to come to work at our hospital. And I told him, you got three options. Number one, you get in the same networks as this hospital is in, so that when a patient comes in and they've done everything right, they know we're in network, they know the doctor's in network, they know everything's in network, but then all of a sudden somebody's not in network. So he said, you can get in our network, you can get in the networks that you want to, but option number three is, because the first time I get a patient, calls me up, cusses me out, badmouths my hospital, you can get gone. You know, that, to me, that's a viable option to solve a lot of these problems. Okay, now, let's say that due to a complication, we do have a surprise bill. Then what? I got a letter yesterday from a lady in Brunswick. Now, not all these bills come from anesthesiologists. This one came from a lab. And for goodness sake, I hope y'all don't ever have to be transported by an air ambulance. Not the first ones in network in Georgia. They charge you for going out there and starting the plane, and then there's so much a mile. Had an instance, a young man over in Auburn got transported, and his parents got a bill for $100,000. But in this particular case, it was a lab, and they said, we didn't know anything about it. All of a sudden, the collection agency started calling because they had given the bill over to the collection agency. I got this yesterday, and I get these all the time, either in paper or in emails from people who have these surprise bills. So what do we do if you get a surprise bill? Well, number one, the hospital or the healthcare organization has to send you out a notice within 90 days. Part of the problem is a lot of these notices these people are getting, it may be as long as 12 months after the procedure. And that's not uncommon. 10 to 12 months after the procedure, they get a bill in the mail. And sometimes it automatically comes from a collection agency, and they say, you pay by X date, or we're going to turn you over to collection agent, and if that occurs, it's going to impact your credit rating. And that's what one of this issues with this lady had. It was turned over to a collection agency right away. So what do you do? Well, you got, from the time the insurance decides what they're going to pay, and the healthcare organization, then they have to send you out this bill within 90 days instead of the 12 months or 10 months or 4 months. And then you have 90 days to try to get this thing resolved. If you can't get it resolved, we've got in here that we will set up a procedure with the insurance department to do arbitration. Now, when you listen, remember I told you 22% of Georgia residents, 1 out of 5, have medical debt in collections right now. Number one reason people go bankrupt. So, we've got it such that by going through the insurance department through arbitration, you don't have to be lawyered up. You don't have to actually, when they set up the rules and regs, you don't even have to come. You can do it over the phone. And I observed a procedure the other day where you could do all this stuff on these small amounts, over the internet, and both parties doesn't have to be there at the same time. But you got somebody at the insurance department who handles insurance on a daily basis to make these decisions on what this fee should be. So, in a nutshell, this is pretty much what this bill does. Hopefully, it will do away with the surprise billing for those scheduled procedures, but then it gives you a procedure to handle the thing if there's a surprise bill, if complications have developed. Now, I don't know how many of y'all received letters like this, But like I say, I received a lot. I brought in last Wednesday a little pack of paper that had 18 pages of instances, and there was 4 or 5 examples on each page of people who had gone through something like one of these surprise bills. And that was just a sample, but it was 18 pages of samples from all over the state of Georgia. So, I'm available for any question that you might have on this.
I have questions of the committee. I see number 17. Representative Fugler.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a point of clarification. Is there a disclosure to the prospective patient that they can ask for this? Because I see it says upon request they can get it.
Yes, ma'am. When you go in to have your procedure done, and for a scheduled procedure, you normally go in a week in advance or something like that, where you do the schedule. You can ask them and they can provide it to you at that time.
That's not my question. My question is there an obligation for them to disclose that the individual can make such a request?
Yes.
Okay.
In the bill, it says if you ask, they have to provide. Is that,
No.
okay, well,
I'm
run
saying
it by
that
me again.
if you might, a patient or prospective patient may not know about this bill and may not know to ask for that. I'm saying as part of the disclosures that they give you when you go to sign up for a procedure, will it be included in the disclosures that you have a right to ask for that information? It's what I'm not seeing.
I understand. To be honest with you, I don't know. It's not listed in there, but under state law, if they ask if this passes under state law, they'll have to tell you.
18. Representative Reeves.
Thank you, and I just wanted to share with the committee last time at the last hearing I had expressed some concern about the way this was worded. It appeared to allow one of the only options to be an arbitration, and I expressed my concerns about that. And it has been added in line 206 after initiate operation, comma, or otherwise act upon the billing. And I've talked with legislative counsel, and I'm comfortable. I believe that opens the door for other options, mediation, small claims, or even full-fledged civil litigation if necessary. And so I think that opens the door to give those options so that whatever the most appropriate remedy that someone would have, I believe they would be able to take advantage of with that language. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions of the author? What is the will of the committee? We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by stating aye. Those opposed, like sign. Bill passes.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, we'll move on to House Bill 734, which is LC number 372519S.
You know, I would ask for y'all to raise your hands on those who read that. All 40-something pages. Bless you. Yeah. I wasn't going to mention this statement as it relates to that particular piece of legislation, but for those of you who are Jerry Seinfeld fans, any of y'all ever heard of Jerry Seinfeld? Okay. His comment was about his show. He said, he always said that his show was a show about nothing. And in the big scheme of things, this bill is a bill about nothing. Now, to put that here again in perspective, this is probably the first of 4 or 5 bills that you're going to see over the next couple of years reflecting the work product for projects undertaken to update, modernize, and make corrections to Title 33. That's the Georgia Insurance Code. Now, this particular piece of legislation covers the first 10 chapters. And what you will see that it does, it makes corrections for wrong citations. It does style and punctuation changes, title corrections, and repeals obsolete provisions in the first 10 chapters. But it does nothing to change the substantive strength of the law. It is a modernizing, cleanup bill, and that is all it does. But you will get to see 2 or 3 more of these over the next couple of years in order to modernize, because based on what I've heard, I wasn't here then, it begins to bring the insurance code, which was first enacted in 1960, into conformity of the current day drafting of the general code provisions. And that's all this bill does.
You have a couple of questions.
Oh, no, please. Okay.
27, Judge Caldwell.
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, no. Yes, sir.
this is nothing but a code revision,
Right.
as all this is, and I have to do it each year on the judicial part, and y'all always pick at me, so I just want to pick at you. It is a bill about nothing, to dot the i's and cross the t's.
That's what it does.
15,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a quick question, just out of curiosity. On line 20, what is a Champus supplement? Does anybody know? That's what I didn't know in reading it. It's a federal program. Oh, okay, okay.
any further questions? Mr. Chairman, are you asking me to call for a motion
Yes,
to
sir.
pass nothing?
Well, you understand as chair now.
We have a motion to pass. Is there a second? We have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by stating aye. Any opposed? Bill passes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
You
Chairman.
can adjourn the meeting if you want.
Without any objection, we stand adjourned.